The morning sun filtered through the tall, narrow windows of the courthouse, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. Inside, the building hummed with the quiet urgency of official business. Lawyers hurriedly flipped through thick folders of documents, their heels clicking against the marble steps leading to the courtroom doors. Court clerks moved with mechanical precision, stamping papers and whispering instructions in hushed tones. Spectators filtered in slowly, the shuffle of shoes and soft murmurs creating a low, almost reverent hum that filled the vast room. It was an ordinary morning in an extraordinary setting, a place where lives were scrutinized, where justice balanced delicately on every word spoken, every gesture made, every piece of evidence laid before the bench. Among the seated crowd, a 3-year-old child sat perched on the edge of a parent's lap, legs dangling, tiny hands gripping the fabric of a neatly pressed jacket. The child's eyes were wide, almost too big for their face, absorbing everything with the kind of intensity only children possess. The raised judge's bench seemed impossibly tall, the rows of chairs stretched endlessly, and the people so serious, so composed appeared like giants in a world that was far too large and formal for someone so small. The parent, seated close by, kept a protective arm around the toddler, occasionally leaning down to whisper reassurances. "It's okay, sweetie. Just watch." But the child's attention was fixed elsewhere, scanning every movement, noting every sound dot at the front of the courtroom. Near the entrance for official personnel, a police dog sat quietly beside its handler. The dog was a large, muscular German shepherd, its coat glossy and perfectly groomed, eyes alert yet calm, exuding an air of disciplined confidence. This was no ordinary dog. Max, as he was called by those who worked with him daily, was highly trained, capable of detecting threats, assisting in searches, and remaining perfectly composed even in chaotic environments. Today, he was assigned to the courtroom as part of standard security, ensuring safety during a high-profile case. His presence was quiet but commanding, and though most adults barely noticed him, for the toddler, Max was a source of fascination, a creature so majestic and composed it seemed magical. The courtroom itself was imposing. Dark wooden panels lined the walls, intricate carvings of scales and justice staring down from every corner. The judge's bench towered at the far end, a polished expanse of mahogany that gleamed under the overhead lights. Behind the bench, the state seal was displayed in gold, symbolizing the authority of the law. Rows of chairs for spectators stretched toward the back, while tables for the defense and prosecution were neatly arranged, covered in stacks of papers, legal pads, and digital tablets. A sense of order dominated the room, a stark contrast to the child's natural chaos of curiosity and wonder. The air was filled with the scent of polished wood, faint coffee, and the slight tang of old paper from the law books lining the walls. Tiny creaks echoed as people shifted in their seats. The gavel rested on the judge's bench, an object both feared and respected, and every time it was lifted or tapped lightly, it demanded attention, silencing murmurs instantly. The adults in the courtroom carried expressions of intense focus, each absorbed in their own responsibilities. Lawyers whispered strategies, court reporters typed furiously, and clerks moved in practiced routines, their eyes darting between the documents and the people. To the child, all of it was mesmerizing, a complex dance of adults performing mysterious rituals that seemed almost like magic, incomprehensible yet captivating. The child shifted slightly, leaning closer to the parent. "What's happening?" the toddler whispered, voice barely audible, a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. The parent smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from the child's forehead. "Just watch, sweetie. People are talking about important things," they murmured, careful to keep the explanation simple. The child nodded solemnly, as if understanding everything, though truly, their attention was elsewhere. Every sound, the shuffle of papers, The soft footfalls, even the low hum of whispered conversations, captured their attention. And then, through the veil of adult seriousness, something else caught their eye. The police dog, sitting majestically, calm yet alert, like a sentinel in this kingdom of law. Max. The police dog was aware of the child immediately. Not in a human sense, but with the kind of attention that animals give to tiny, unpredictable creatures. His ears twitched slightly, and his amber eyes softened as he noticed the small figure staring in his direction. The handler, a tall, sturdy officer in uniform, kept a protective hand on Max's harness, yet allowed the dog gentle freedom of movement, trusting his composure and discipline. Max had been in countless situations, raids, searches, public events, but something about the innocence radiating from the child seemed to resonate differently. The child's wide eyes, full of wonder and excitement, mirrored an unspoken recognition. This dog was not just part of the adult world, not just a tool of law and security, but a living, breathing companion in an otherwise formal, rigid environment. Time seemed to slow for the child. The voices of adults, the serious expressions, the piles of documents, they all faded into the background. The focus was singular, the dog. Tiny fingers reached forward, gripping at nothing but air, an instinctive gesture of fascination. A quiet giggle escaped the child, barely audible, but enough to make the parent glance down with a bemused smile. The adults, still busy with their tasks, barely noticed. But the stage was set for a small, extraordinary moment that would soon ripple through the courtroom. Lawyers and clerks, absorbed in their duties, failed to notice the quiet exchange between the child and the police dog. Papers rustled, keys clicked, and the judge's eyes scanned over the day's agenda. No one anticipated that in this sea of adult seriousness, a tiny voice would pierce through the atmosphere, creating a moment that none would forget. The child shifted forward, eyes fixed, breath caught in quiet anticipation. The dog remained perfectly still, seemingly understanding that this moment was not about threats, about law, or about procedure. It was about recognition, curiosity, and a connection as simple as it was profound. As the morning progressed, the child's excitement grew, fingers fidgeting, tiny feet bouncing. The parent whispered reminders to stay seated and quiet, but it was clear the child had found something far more compelling than the legal arguments unfolding before them. The police dog, a figure of strength and discipline, had unwittingly become the center of attention for the smallest spectator in the room. The stage was perfectly set for the moment of recognition, the moment when innocence would remind the adults of a simple truth. Joy often comes in small, unexpected packages. And then, just as the judge called the court to order, the child's wide eyes locked on Max. A soft, eager voice broke the courtroom's subdued hum. Two simple words, full of wonder, pure in their honesty. The courtroom had settled into its usual rhythm after the initial bustle of the morning. Lawyers whispered quietly at their tables, flipping through pages of legal documents and quietly strategizing their arguments. The judge reviewed notes, occasionally adjusting glasses perched on the bridge of the nose, while court reporters tapped rapidly at their keyboards, capturing every word. Spectators murmured softly to each other, their hushed tones blending with the faint scratching of pens and the shuffle of papers. To the adults, this was a day like any other, a serious matter of law, unfolding with precise order and expectation. But for one small observer, everything was new, gigantic, and endlessly fascinating. The 3-year-old perched on the parent's lap shifted again, wiggling slightly as the world around them unfolded like a storybook. Tiny eyes scanned the room from the shiny, polished floors to the towering judge's bench. Every detail seemed magical. The carved wood panels, the intricate patterns of the carpet, even the small, almost imperceptible flickers of light reflecting off the polished surfaces. But what truly captivated the child was not the architecture or the ritual of law, It was the police dog. Max, sitting near the front, calm, alert, and impossibly majestic, had caught the child's attention in a way nothing else in the courtroom could. The child's fascination was immediate and absolute. Tiny fingers pointed, a quiet gasp escaped, and lips parted in awe. The parent noticed, but didn't interrupt, allowing the child to explore this moment freely. "Do you see him?" the parent whispered softly. The child nodded vigorously, eyes fixed. In that instant, it was clear that the dog had captured more than attention. It had captured imagination, curiosity, and a sense of wonder that the structured adult world could never provide. The contrast was striking. The courtroom, with its rules, order, and seriousness, and this child, filled with unfiltered fascination, noticing what adults often overlooked. Max's presence was calm, yet commanding. The dog's posture was perfect. Back straight, head held high, ears alert, and eyes observing the room with quiet intelligence. He didn't bark, growl, or fidget. He simply existed in the space, a sentinel of authority. The handler, standing just behind him, radiated confidence, yet allowed the dog a subtle freedom, trusting Max's disciplined nature. Max had been in situations far more chaotic than this, a high-pressure raid, a tense search, crowds at public events, but there was something different about this small human. The child's wide-eyed innocence seemed to communicate in a language the dog understood. Every slight movement, every curious glance was met with patient stillness, a silent acknowledgement. The child leaned forward, tiny body almost vibrating with excitement. A whisper escaped. "Doggy, doggy." The words were barely audible, but the parent smiled knowingly, recognizing the pure, unfiltered observation. The child didn't care about legal arguments, procedural rules, or the tense air of the courtroom. Their focus was singular. The dog, with its powerful build and gentle demeanor, seemed almost magical. The parent held the toddler close, trying to balance amusement with the unspoken need to remain respectful in the formal setting. But the excitement in the child's eyes was contagious, a spark that seemed to pierce the subdued atmosphere. Spectators nearby noticed the child's fascination. Some chuckled quietly. Others exchanged knowing glances, remembering their own childhood curiosity. The tension of the courtroom, the seriousness of the ongoing case, all seemed to melt slightly in the presence of this small observer. For the adults, it was a reminder that life was larger than the constraints of procedure and decorum. For the child, it was an entirely new world full of wonder, mystery, and awe-inspiring creatures like Max. Every subtle shift of the dog's head, every soft rustle of its harness was a story unfolding before tiny eyes. The parent whispered again, "Do you like him?" The child nodded vigorously, tiny hand reaching forward as if to touch the large dog. Max didn't move, but his eyes softened, and his ears twitched slightly in acknowledgement. There was a calm understanding between the two, a silent communication that transcended words. The child's delight was palpable, a mixture of joy, curiosity, and the simple thrill of recognizing a friendly presence in a room filled with unfamiliar faces and rigid rules. The adult world, for a moment, paused to accommodate this small burst of innocent fascination. Lawyers and clerks, still focused on their tasks, failed to notice the quiet drama unfolding in the gallery. Yet those who glanced toward the child could see it, the tiny figure leaning forward, completely captivated. There was something universally charming about a 3-year-old noticing something adults take for granted. Papers might rustle, phones might buzz, and the judge might scribble notes, but the child's attention remained unwavering. The entire scene, though small and subtle, carried weight, a gentle reminder of innocence amidst the gravity of law. Even the police handler noticed the interaction. Max, usually unflappable, seemed to respond to the child's energy in a way that defied explanation. The dog's stance remained composed, but the amber eyes held a spark of gentle acknowledgement. This was no ordinary glance. It was a silent connection that bridged age, size, and experience. Max had met many people in his career, but there was something different about this tiny observer, pure curiosity, untarnished by fear, judgment, or distraction. For a brief moment, the courtroom's formality softened around this small, shared understanding. Time seemed to slow as the child's gaze never wavered. Each small gesture, the shifting of weight, the fidget of tiny fingers, the subtle bounce of the legs was a reflection of pure engagement. The parent whispered, "Do you want to say hi?" But the child only shook their head slightly, mesmerized. There was no need for words yet. The child and Max existed in a quiet, magical bubble, untouched by adult concerns. The rest of the courtroom was present, yet invisible. The connection was immediate and powerful, a shared recognition that both parties understood each other in a way the structured world could not fully grasp. Minutes passed like seconds. The judge called the room to attention, signaling the start of the session. Lawyers straightened, papers shuffled, and the room's tension subtly returned. But the child's focus never broke. The excitement, the curiosity, the quiet anticipation, it all built toward a moment of revelation. The observer, tiny and innocent, would soon voice the words that no one expected. Two simple words that would cut through the courtroom's formality, capturing the hearts of everyone present. It was almost inevitable. The way children notice what adults overlook. The way innocence pierces through seriousness with breathtaking simplicity. And then, as if the world itself paused for a single breath, the child leaned forward, eyes locked on Max, and spoke. "Doggy." "Police." The words, soft and unpolished, yet perfectly clear, echoed in the courtroom like a sudden ray of sunlight through clouds. Every head turned, every eye focused, and for an instant, the room held its collective breath. What followed would become a story, whispered in courtrooms, shared in offices, and posted online, a testament to the unassuming magic that a child's perspective could create in the most serious of places. The courtroom's atmosphere was tense, a mixture of anticipation and routine that hovered over every person present. Lawyers whispered in low tones, arranging their arguments and reviewing notes, while the judge shuffled papers with a meticulous air, preparing to maintain order and authority in the room. Spectators remained seated, murmuring quietly among themselves, their attention divided between curiosity and decorum. Every detail mattered in this space, every gesture carried weight, and every word was scrutinized with purpose. Yet, amid all this seriousness, a tiny figure sat on a parent's lap, entirely absorbed in a single, unexpected focal point. The police dog, the child, only 3 years old, had been staring at Max for several minutes, observing every subtle movement and nuance. Tiny hands fidgeted nervously, fingers tracing imaginary lines in the air, while eyes darted between the dog and the parent, seeking reassurance. The parent, fully aware of the child's fascination, whispered gentle words, trying to balance amusement with the unspoken rules of decorum. "Just watch, sweetie," they murmured. "He's a very good dog." But the toddler's focus was absolute, a pure intensity rarely seen in adults. The world had narrowed to the dog's calm posture, alert gaze, and quiet authority. Max remained perfectly still, sitting beside the handler with an air of composed discipline. His ears twitched occasionally, his head tilted slightly, and his eyes followed the child's every movement. There was something almost magical in the way the dog responded, not with aggression, nor excitement, nor indifference, but with a subtle awareness that acknowledged the child's presence. Max had been trained to read situations carefully, to respond to humans calmly, but this interaction was different. The dog sensed curiosity, innocence, and unfiltered admiration, qualities far removed from the tension and fear Max usually encountered. The child shifted forward, knees bouncing slightly, tiny hands clenching the parent's sleeve. A soft, excited whisper broke the monotony of the courtroom's low hum. "Doggy." The parent's heart swelled with a mixture of amusement and pride, realizing that the moment they had quietly anticipated was about to unfold. The child's voice, delicate yet clear, carried a sense of wonder that no amount of adult seriousness could contain. Every pair of eyes in the gallery, or at least those who glanced up, noticed the child's unrestrained focus. And then it happened. The toddler's wide eyes sparkled with delight, cheeks flushing with excitement, and the words tumbled out. "Doggy." "Police." The courtroom froze. Every pen paused mid-strike, every shuffle of paper halted, and even the judge's hand, poised to tap the gavel, remained suspended. The words were simple, unrefined, yet perfectly accurate, a child's innocent recognition of a police dog at work. In that instant, the sterile, procedural space of the courtroom was pierced by pure human emotion, joy, surprise, and a profound sense of shared amusement. The simplicity of the utterance contrasted sharply with the weight of the legal proceedings, creating a moment that was at once magical and unforgettable. The parent looked down at the child, caught between laughter and nervousness, trying to maintain composure while simultaneously encouraging this expression of wonder. "Yes," they whispered softly, smiling. "That's Max. That's the police dog." The child's small fingers pointed eagerly, and lips curled into a delighted grin. The enthusiasm was palpable, a tiny burst of energy that spread subtly to everyone within earshot. Even hardened courtroom professionals, accustomed to monotony, argument, and tension, found their expressions softening. The moment was infectious. Across the room, whispers of amusement began to circulate. A clerk, trying not to smile, nudged a colleague, whispering, "Did you hear that? The kid just called him a police dog." The lawyers exchanged brief, bemused glances, their rigid facades cracking with suppressed laughter. Even the judge, known for strictness and a stern demeanor, allowed a faint smile to tug at the corners of their mouth. The gavel, symbol of authority and control, rested forgotten on the bench as the courtroom collectively absorbed the innocence of the moment. Max, the police dog, remained perfectly composed. Yet the amber eyes seemed almost to twinkle in acknowledgement of the child's excitement. The dog's calm, silent presence became the centerpiece of an impromptu, heartwarming interaction. The handler, standing tall but relaxed, allowed a small grin to spread across their face. Years of training had taught them to anticipate chaos, yet this quiet display of human and canine connection was far more impactful than any controlled response or drill. Max had done nothing extraordinary, yet the child's recognition made him heroic in a simple, profound way. The child, noticing that attention had shifted, smiled broadly. A tiny laugh escaped, a delicate sound that seemed almost sacred in the hushed courtroom. The excitement of discovery, the thrill of being noticed, and the joy of acknowledging a friend had fused into a single, unforgettable moment. The child's voice, so small yet so powerful in its honesty, reminded everyone present of the value of curiosity and unfiltered perception. In a room built for seriousness, a toddler had created a moment of shared humanity, laughter, and warmth. The judge, regaining composure, spoke gently, addressing both the child and the courtroom. "Well, it seems we have an expert observer among us today," they said, voice warm, almost playful. "Yes, that is Max, our very diligent police dog." The subtle humor in the tone diffused the remaining tension, eliciting soft laughter from the gallery and the lawyers alike. The formalities of the courtroom, rigid as they were, allowed this small break in tradition, this rare injection of warmth, to breathe life into the room. Spectators leaned in quietly, stealing glances at the interaction. Some whispered to each other, sharing smiles and nods of approval. Phones were subtly raised to capture the scene, though most respected the solemnity of the space. What had begun as a private moment between a child and a dog had become a shared experience, resonating with every observer who witnessed the unfiltered authenticity of a toddler's recognition. The contrast was striking. The serious weight of law, the careful precision of professionals, and the unadulterated innocence of a child all coexisting in a fleeting, unforgettable moment. The parent held the toddler close, whispering soft encouragements while trying not to disrupt proceedings. "See, everyone likes what you said," they murmured. The child's grin widened, confidence blossoming from the acknowledgement. There was pride in this simple act, an understanding that even the smallest voice could be heard, that even a tiny observer could create ripples in the adult world. The courtroom, though still formal, softened around this acknowledgement, as if collectively pausing to admire the simple truth the child had articulated. Lawyers returned to their preparations. Clerks resumed typing, and the judge cleared the throat softly, signaling a return to decorum. Yet the energy in the room had shifted. Adults carried subtle smiles, their earlier tension eased by the reminder that even in the midst of serious matters, moments of joy, laughter, and shared humanity were possible. Max remained poised, a silent, noble witness to the child's exuberance. The two-word proclamation, "Doggy, police," had transformed a routine courtroom session into a story that would be remembered, retold, and cherished by all who experienced it firsthand. As the legal proceedings resumed, the child continued to watch Max with fascination, occasional quiet giggles escaping despite the parent's gentle admonitions. The courtroom, though now more formal in action, carried the invisible residue of the moment. Warmth, laughter, and the awareness that innocence could momentarily dissolve rigidity. Everyone present, from the judge to the spectators in the back row, carried the subtle imprint of two words spoken with joy, clarity, and authenticity, a reminder that even the smallest voice can have a profound impact. And so, in that large, imposing courtroom filled with authority, law, and expectation, a 3-year-old's simple recognition of a police dog left an indelible mark. The moment of recognition was complete, powerful, and unforgettable, a testament to the unexpected ways in which innocence, curiosity, and joy could interrupt the most serious of environments, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The courtroom seemed to pause in the wake of the toddler's simple yet profound declaration. "Doggy, police." The words, light and innocent, resonated far beyond their size, cutting through the formality, the tension, and the subtle rigidity that often hung in the air like a weighty fog. For a moment, the gavel on the judge's bench seemed insignificant. The stacks of legal documents and the shuffle of papers faded into the background. All that mattered was the small child, perched on a parent's lap, and the police dog, Max, sitting perfectly composed, alert but unbothered, responding in silence to the tiny observer's awe. The judge, a stern figure accustomed to command and authority, found themselves smiling. It was not a faint smile, hidden or reluctant. It was genuine, a crack in the armor of seriousness that had dominated the morning. A chuckle, barely audible at first, escaped before they could contain it. The courtroom, trained to listen, pause, and follow procedural decorum, now listened to laughter, not in mockery, but in shared delight. The judge's voice, warm and gentle, carried across the room. "Well, it seems we have an expert observer among us today. That's indeed Max, our police dog." The words, playful yet measured, were a subtle permission for the adults to experience a brief reprieve from gravity. Lawyers glanced up from their tables, eyebrows raised, a mixture of surprise and amusement spreading across their faces. A stern prosecuting attorney, accustomed to the cold precision of legal argumentation, found themselves suppressing a laugh. Their defense counterpart, normally reserved and strategic, allowed a faint grin to escape. Even court clerks, who had seen decades of proceedings with little room for humor, shared quiet glances, and whispered chuckles. It was as if the child's innocent observation had unlocked a hidden human side of the courtroom, reminding everyone present that beneath the formalities were people capable of warmth, joy, and laughter. Max, the police dog, remained seated, stoic yet observant. The amber eyes flicked toward the child, attentive and unbothered by the attention, exuding a quiet confidence that mirrored the discipline instilled through years of rigorous training. There was no bark, no movement, only a soft, subtle acknowledgement. Max had encountered many people before, in situations far more chaotic or frightening, yet this interaction was different. There was no threat, no tension, only curiosity, wonder, and honesty. The child's joy seemed to radiate, filling the space with a sense of calm energy that complemented the dog's steady presence. Spectators in the gallery shifted, leaning slightly forward to witness the scene more clearly. Whispered exclamations of amusement floated through the rows. "Did you hear that? That kid is adorable. Such a calm dog for such a tiny human." Even those seated in the back rows, far from the front, felt the subtle shift in energy. The room's serious atmosphere had softened, replaced by collective recognition of something precious and fleeting. For a few moments, the courtroom became less about legal procedure and more about shared humanity, a rare gift. In a space defined by rules and expectations, the child, noticing the slight smiles and laughter around them, beamed with pride. Fingers waved excitedly toward Max, tiny legs bouncing with uncontrollable energy. The parent whispered gentle encouragements, careful not to disrupt proceedings. "Yes, that's Max. He's a very good dog." The toddler's grin widened, eyes sparkling, the pure joy of being noticed and acknowledged radiating in every gesture. It was a moment of empowerment, the kind that comes from expressing oneself freely and having the world respond with warmth and acceptance. The judge, regaining composure but maintaining a soft smile, allowed the room a gentle acknowledgement of the humor and humanity of the moment. "Max has been with us for years," the judge said, voice calm but tinged with amusement. "He is trained, disciplined, and dedicated to his work. But as you can see, even a police dog can inspire the curiosity and delight of the youngest among us." The courtroom, listening intently, responded with quiet chuckles and nods. There was an unspoken agreement that decorum could accommodate a little levity, that rules could coexist with moments of shared joy. Lawyers returned to their tables, yet the atmosphere had shifted permanently. The subtle smiles remained, hands relaxed slightly over papers, eyes twinkling with the memory of the child's words. Even as arguments resumed, every voice seemed lighter, every gesture less rigid. The courtroom had witnessed something extraordinary, the reminder that innocence could momentarily dissolve tension, that a child's perspective could offer clarity and joy in the midst of serious matters. The event, though small, had an outsized impact, resonating far beyond the words themselves. The child continued to watch Max with rapt attention, occasionally whispering phrases like, "Good doggy," or "Hello, police." Each utterance was met with tiny nods from the parent, subtle twitches of the dog's ears, and shared smiles across the gallery. The pure, unfiltered excitement of the toddler acted like a ripple, spreading warmth and a sense of community in a space often dominated by rules, authority, and seriousness. Every subtle interaction, the child's pointing, Max's calm acknowledgement, the parent's gentle encouragement, combined to create a tableau that was at once humorous, heartwarming, and profoundly human. Even the court staff, usually unnoticed observers in the procedural machinery of justice, paused briefly to watch. Clerks, bailiffs, and reporters exchanged glances, subtle smiles forming as they witnessed the unusual scene. One clerk, barely able to contain a chuckle, whispered to a colleague, "I don't think I've ever seen the courtroom like this." That kid's words just changed everything for a moment. The colleague nodded, eyes glinting with amusement. The formal space, typically measured and predictable, had been transformed by a combination of curiosity, innocence, and the quiet dignity of a police dog. The interaction between child and dog created a rare bond in the room, bridging generations, roles, and expectations. For the adults, it was a reminder of the simple joys often overlooked. For the child, it was a moment of recognition and wonder. Max, as always, remained composed, a silent participant in a scene that would later be recounted in offices, social circles, and eventually online. The combination of innocence and calm professionalism had created a story worth remembering, a story that humanized a space normally dominated by strict rules and procedure. Judge allowed the moment to linger just long enough to be fully appreciated. "Perhaps Max deserves a round of applause," they said lightly, eliciting soft, appreciative claps from spectators and participants alike. The child laughed, clapping tiny hands in delight, while Max's ears twitched, seemingly acknowledging the approval. Lawyers smiled discreetly, staff shared quiet nods, and even the more serious spectators couldn't help but feel the warmth of a rare and spontaneous connection. The courtroom, in that moment, had transcended its usual function, becoming a stage for a story that united everyone present in shared amusement and appreciation. Even as the legal proceedings resumed, the memory of the child's declaration lingered in the air. The judge's gavel tapped lightly, restoring order, but the smiles remained. Lawyers straightened papers, but their expressions had softened. Court staff returned to duties, but their hearts carried a lightness that had not been there before. The child's 2 words, so simple, so honest, had done what no argument, no legal motion, and no procedural statement could. They had reminded every adult in the room of the value of curiosity, joy, and the power of innocence. Minutes passed, and the proceedings continued with formal rigor, yet the atmosphere remained subtly altered. Every glance toward the child or Max elicited soft smiles, quiet chuckles, or gentle nods. The courtroom had experienced something extraordinary, a reminder that even in spaces dominated by seriousness, rules, and authority, moments of joy and shared humanity could emerge unexpectedly, triggered by the smallest observers and the most unassuming participants. And so, the courtroom's response to the child's 2 words was not just laughter or smiles. It was a collective acknowledgement of life's small, beautiful interruptions. It was a recognition that innocence could diffuse tension, that curiosity could captivate attention, and that joy could emerge in the most formal of spaces. The words "doggy," "police," had become a symbol, a catalyst, a memory that everyone present would carry beyond the walls of the courthouse, a story to share, retell, and treasure. Max, the police dog, sat calmly beside his handler, his posture flawless, his amber eyes alert yet serene. To the untrained eye, he might have seemed like just another animal in uniform, quietly performing a task assigned to him. But those who knew Max understood that he was far more than that. Trained over several years in various aspects of law enforcement, Max was a highly skilled German shepherd, capable of detecting threats, assisting in searches, and responding to emergencies with precision and composure. Today, however, his role was simple: to provide security in the courtroom. And yet, in this moment, his presence carried far more significance than any security detail could demand. Max had been paired with his handler, Officer Daniels, for nearly 4 years. From the start, the bond between them had been remarkable. Daniels often described Max as intuitive, responsive, and highly perceptive. Whether in the middle of a chaotic street pursuit or a high-pressure training exercise, Max's demeanor was steady and reliable. He seemed to sense the emotional temperature of a room, adjusting his behavior accordingly, calm when tension ran high, alert when vigilance was required, and gentle when empathy was needed. Today, Max was observing more than just the courtroom. He was witnessing the pure, unfiltered curiosity of a child, a dynamic far removed from his usual duties. The child's gaze, wide-eyed and unblinking, had captivated Max almost instantly. There was a distinct energy in the way the toddler leaned forward, tiny hands pointing, lips parting in awe that seemed to resonate with the dog. Years of training had prepared Max for countless high-stress scenarios, but this was different. There was no threat, no anxiety, no noise to suppress only wonder. Max tilted his head slightly, ears flicking, and locked eyes with the child, maintaining a patient and dignified presence. It was a silent communication, a recognition of innocence and joy that the child could not yet articulate fully. Officer Daniels watched with subtle amusement, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Looks like someone has made a new friend," he whispered under his breath, careful not to disturb the courtroom proceedings. The handler's pride in Max was evident, but there was more than professional admiration in his expression. There was a quiet awe at how the dog had become part of an unscripted, heartwarming interaction. Max was not performing tricks, responding to commands, or showing off training. He was simply being himself, calm, aware, and capable of forming a silent bond with a child who saw him with wide-eyed curiosity. Max's role in the courtroom that day was officially simple: remain present, alert, and ready. But his true impact went beyond duty. The dog's mere presence had shifted the atmosphere, softened the tension, and provided a focal point for the child's fascination. Adults, bound by years of formality, hierarchy, and procedural rigor, found themselves pausing, smiling, and quietly laughing at the unexpected interaction. Max had, without any action or command, created a bridge between the rigid seriousness of the courtroom and the unfiltered innocence of a toddler. In a space dominated by rules, he had introduced joy. Max's training had prepared him for everything from tracking suspects to detecting substances. Yet, he had also been trained to sense emotional cues, a skill often underestimated in law enforcement. This instinctive perception allowed him to respond appropriately to humans of all ages, including children. In previous public events, Max had demonstrated patience with curious hands, sudden noises, and unpredictable behavior, always maintaining composure, never overreacting. Today, the culmination of those skills was on display, not in a life-or-death situation, but in the delicate art of presence, observation, and silent empathy. The child's delight in recognizing Max was mirrored subtly by the dog's attentive gaze. Every tiny movement, a finger pointing, a slight bounce of the leg, a giggle was noted, processed, and acknowledged in the dog's quiet, dignified way. Max didn't bark or move forward. He didn't need to. His calm and steady presence provided reassurance, a living anchor amidst the sterile formality of the courtroom. For the child, it was enough to simply see the dog, to feel acknowledged by his attentive eyes. This mutual recognition, so simple, so pure, spoke volumes to the adults witnessing it. Even spectators began to appreciate Max's understated influence. The courtroom, previously tense with legal seriousness, had softened. People who had been focused on documents, strategies, and proceedings were now paying attention to the interplay between a child and a police dog. Whispers spread quietly. "Look at the dog watching the kid. He's so calm, and the kid's so happy." It was a shared human moment, one that transcended the procedural rigidity and reminded everyone of the simple truths often overlooked in their daily lives. Max, without moving, had captured the attention and admiration of the entire room. The parent, fully aware of Max's remarkable training and temperament, smiled down at the child. "That's Max," they whispered, fingers brushing the toddler's hair back. "He's a very smart police dog, but he's also very gentle." The child's eyes sparkled, and a soft giggle escaped. The parent marveled at the interaction, recognizing the rare magic in the combination of innocence and the dog's composed attention. For them, the moment was not just amusing. It was deeply meaningful, a gentle reminder of the bonds possible between humans and animals. Even in the most unexpected settings, Max's presence also influenced the courtroom staff and professionals. The judge, now fully attentive to the child's delight, maintained a warm smile, appreciating the way the dog's calmness allowed a break in tension. Lawyers found themselves subtly grinning, realizing that the seriousness of the room had been softened without any deliberate act, just by the presence of a well-trained, dignified police dog and a curious, innocent observer. The shared human recognition of this simple scene created a unique atmosphere, a rare convergence of professionalism, formality, and heartfelt amusement. Over the years, Max had participated in countless events, often serving as the calm eye in chaotic situations. He had assisted in emergencies, helped search for missing persons, and even appeared in demonstrations for the public. But rarely, if ever, had he been part of a scenario where the impact was purely emotional rather than procedural. Today was different. The dog's silent dignity, combined with the child's innocent curiosity, created a scene that would resonate long after the legal proceedings concluded. Max had become more than a security presence. He had become a symbol of calm reliability and unspoken empathy. The child, seemingly unaware of the adult attention surrounding them, continued to focus on Max. Tiny hands waved, fingers pointed, and soft murmurs of admiration escaped little lips. "Good doggy." "Hello, police." Each phrase was met with quiet acknowledgement, a tilt of the head, or a soft ear flick from Max. The interaction was seamless, unforced, and wholly natural. In a room designed for rules, authority, and procedure, the dog had created a bridge between generations, roles, and expectations. It was a subtle, profound reminder that the simplest gestures, whether from a child or a dog, can profoundly influence those around them. Officer Daniels watched with quiet pride. Max had always been exceptional, capable of performing under pressure. But witnessing this unscripted moment highlighted qualities that training alone could not produce: empathy, perception, and a gentle presence. "You've got a way of doing things, buddy," Daniels whispered softly, voice barely audible. The dog's eyes flicked toward the officer briefly, then returned to the child, maintaining composure. The bond between dog, handler, and human observer was unspoken yet deeply understood, a testament to years of dedication and shared experience. Even as the courtroom slowly returned to its usual rhythm, the subtle energy remained. Adults retained their smiles, staff moved with lighter steps, and the child's laughter occasionally punctuated the formal proceedings. Max remained poised, silent but powerful in influence, embodying calm, discipline, and empathy simultaneously. The simple presence of a well-trained police dog, when paired with the innocence of a child, had transformed a routine day in the courtroom into a moment of lasting warmth and joy, a story to be remembered, retold, and cherished by all who had witnessed it firsthand. The courtroom, once dominated by procedural formality and the quiet hum of legal processes, now carried an undercurrent of warmth that no one could ignore. The simple, innocent words of a 3-year-old, "Doggy, police," had transformed the atmosphere, softening tension, melting stern expressions, and creating a moment of shared joy among adults who were often consumed by their responsibilities. Even as lawyers shuffled papers and the judge prepared to resume the day's agenda, the emotional energy sparked by the child's recognition lingered, subtle but powerful, like sunlight filtering through a heavy curtain. For the parent holding the child on their lap, the experience was both heartwarming and humbling. They watched their toddler beam at Max, tiny hands gesturing excitedly, laughter bubbling quietly yet uncontrollably. It was a rare privilege to witness pure, unfiltered joy in a space defined by seriousness. Whispering softly, the parent encouraged their child's fascination, careful to maintain decorum, but unwilling to dampen the moment. Yes, that's Max, our police dog. Isn't he amazing? The child's delighted nod, followed by another small giggle, reinforced the profound simplicity of the connection. Max, ever composed, remained seated, a silent observer and participant in the unfolding scene. His amber eyes reflected both awareness and calm, acknowledging the child's excitement without disruption. It was a striking contrast. The small, exuberant energy of a toddler and the quiet, disciplined presence of a police dog, coexisting harmoniously in the middle of a room, usually dominated by authority and strict rules. The dog's ability to remain calm, observant, and gentle made him the perfect companion for such a delicate, heartwarming interaction. Spectators in the gallery, who had initially arrived for serious observation of the proceedings, found themselves captivated. Their attention shifted from legal arguments and case notes to the small tableau unfolding before them. Child, dog, parent, and handler. Soft murmurs of delight spread through the room. Some whispered, "Isn't that adorable?" Others shared knowing smiles, recalling their own childhood encounters with animals that sparked curiosity and joy. Even those seated in the back rows, removed physically from the interaction, seemed to absorb the warmth radiating through the room. It was a collective acknowledgement of life's small, beautiful moments. The judge, once a symbol of strict authority and procedure, allowed themselves to fully participate in the moment without compromising the dignity of the courtroom. A gentle smile spread across their face as they observed the child's uncontainable excitement and Max's patient attention. "Well," the judge said softly, with a hint of amusement, "it appears we have a young enthusiast in our midst." And I can see Max has made quite the impression. The courtroom, hearing the judge's words, responded with subtle chuckles and nods. Their attention temporarily shifted from legal matters to shared humanity. Lawyers, who normally maintained a strict professional distance from spectators, found themselves affected as well. The prosecuting attorney, holding a stack of documents, allowed a small grin to appear, briefly exchanging amused glances with the defense counsel. Even the most stoic professionals could not resist acknowledging the charm of the scene. The formal proceedings, heavy with tension, had been momentarily softened by the innocence of a toddler and the calm dignity of a highly trained police dog. It was a rare convergence of professionalism and joy, a reminder of the human element often overlooked in rigid environments. Max, trained to perceive emotional cues and respond appropriately, seemed to sense the positive energy around him. His posture remained alert yet relaxed, a balance between readiness and gentle awareness. Each subtle movement of the child, the pointing finger, the soft murmur, the quiet giggle, was absorbed and acknowledged. The interaction was almost conversational in its nature, though entirely nonverbal. It was as if Max understood that this moment required patience, calm presence, and quiet support, and he fulfilled that role flawlessly. The dog's role extended beyond security. He had become a living anchor for joy and curiosity in the room. The child's delight became contagious. Spectators who had been quietly observing the proceedings now found themselves smiling openly, whispering soft words of encouragement, and stealing glances at the unfolding interaction. Some reached for phones, capturing glimpses of the child's expressions, Max's composure, and the shared warmth in the room. The parent, amused and proud, encouraged the toddler's fascination, offering quiet explanations and gentle praise. "Yes, Max is very brave. And he's also very kind." The child nodded vigorously, absorbing every word with wide-eyed admiration, a moment of learning intertwined with joy. Even the court staff, usually invisible to the proceedings, were affected by the unexpected warmth. Clerks, bailiffs, and other officials exchanged subtle smiles and quiet whispers, appreciating the innocence and authenticity of the moment. It was a reminder that even in spaces dominated by rules, hierarchy, and responsibility, moments of human connection could emerge spontaneously. The child's excitement, Max's calm presence, and the parents' gentle guidance had created a ripple effect, infusing the courtroom with a sense of shared humanity and lightness. The moment also reminded adults present of the importance of perspective. The child's unfiltered curiosity cut through the weight of formality, revealing a simple truth. Joy and fascination could exist alongside duty and responsibility. Lawyers who had been absorbed in procedural strategies, the judge who had been reviewing notes, and spectators focused on legal outcomes all experienced a subtle but profound shift. The child's words and expressions were a reminder that life's smallest moments could leave the largest impressions, even in the most unexpected environments. Officer Daniels, Max's handler, observed with quiet pride. Years of training had prepared Max for the most challenging, chaotic situations, yet here he was, participating in a different kind of mission, offering calm presence and empathy to a small human being. Daniels whispered softly, almost to himself, "You've got a good heart, Max." The dog's steady gaze, attentive yet unassuming, seemed to respond. The handler recognized that Max had not only fulfilled his duty, but had also participated in a uniquely human interaction, creating a memory that would endure far beyond the walls of the courthouse. The child's giggles punctuated the subdued murmurs of the courtroom, a gentle soundtrack to an otherwise formal environment. Fingers continued to wave toward Max, eyes widened in fascination, and small, breathless whispers expressed awe and delight. The energy in the room was subtle but pervasive, warmth, amusement, and a shared sense of joy that transcended the usual focus on legal procedure. In that moment, the child, the dog, and the parent had transformed the courtroom into a space where innocence and empathy took center stage, reminding everyone of the enduring power of simple connections. Even as the judge signaled a return to the formal agenda, the emotional resonance remained. Spectators carried soft smiles, lawyers maintained lighter expressions, and the courtroom staff moved with a quiet sense of satisfaction. The moment, though fleeting, had been profound, a testament to the extraordinary impact of ordinary interactions. The child's fascination, Max's calm dignity, and the parents' gentle guidance had created a scene that would be remembered long after the day ended. A heartwarming interlude in a world dominated by rules, procedure, and seriousness. The child, still captivated, whispered softly to the parent, "Doggy, good doggy." The parent's heart swelled. Tiny words, spoken with sincerity and wonder, had created a bridge across age, experience, and authority. Max, as always, responded with silent acknowledgement, reinforcing the gentle power of presence. The room, filled with adults trained to observe, judge, and decide, found itself momentarily united in the simple, universal appreciation of innocence, joy, and quiet empathy. This shared experience, though seemingly small, was powerful. The courtroom, steeped in tradition, hierarchy, and gravity, had experienced a rare infusion of humanity. Laughter, smiles, and subtle gestures of approval permeated the space, and for those present, the memory would remain indelible. The child had reminded everyone that even in the most serious environments, life's small joys, the wonder of discovery, and the power of simple connection could create moments of lasting significance. And so, for a few minutes, the world of the courtroom softened. The weight of proceedings, the tension of legal debate, and the formality of authority yielded to the innocence of a child and the silent dignity of a police dog. The moment was fleeting, yet enduring a heartwarming reminder that even in spaces defined by rules and procedure, human connection, joy, and empathy could flourish, leaving a lasting impact on everyone fortunate enough to witness it. The courthouse had returned to its standard rhythm. The gavel tapped, lawyers shuffled papers, and the judge reviewed the day's docket with meticulous attention. Yet the warmth, laughter, and shared humanity sparked by a 3-year-old and a police dog lingered like a soft echo in the walls. Even as the legal proceedings continued, the memory of Doggy, police, remained vivid, tucked into the minds of everyone present. The gallery, once filled with strangers focused on rules and cases, now shared a secret. They had witnessed a rare, heartwarming moment of pure innocence. As the parent led the child quietly out of the courtroom, gentle whispers followed them down the polished hallways. Court staff, who had been silently observing, offered knowing smiles, some even quietly calling after them, "That was adorable." Officers in the halls nodded at Max, acknowledging the small but profound connection that had unfolded. News of the interaction began to ripple quietly through the courthouse, reaching colleagues, clerks, and even the judge's assistants. In a space defined by seriousness, a story of delight had taken root, destined to travel far beyond the room where it occurred. Officer Daniels, Max's handler, noticed the subtle buzz among courthouse staff. They exchanged brief glances, the silent understanding clear. Something unique had happened. Max had performed no special tricks, no display of physical prowess. Yet he had impacted everyone present simply by existing calmly and acknowledging a child's curiosity. Daniels quietly documented the moment, noting the child's expressions, gestures, and interaction with Max. The footage would later be shared, not as official evidence or professional display, but as a heartwarming story meant to inspire and delight. Word of the courtroom interaction traveled quickly through informal channels. Clerks shared the story over coffee breaks. Lawyers recounted it to colleagues with a hint of pride and amusement. Within hours, the tale of a 3-year-old spotting a police dog and uttering 2 words had become a highlight of the day, spreading with an almost contagious joy. What began as a simple, fleeting moment had captured the attention of professionals who rarely allowed themselves emotional indulgence, and now it was spreading into the wider community. Outside the courthouse, the story reached local reporters. A young journalist, intrigued by the unusual and heartwarming nature of the event, decided it deserved a wider audience. The combination of innocence, animals, and human connection provided a compelling narrative, perfect for a human interest story. The journalist carefully interviewed witnesses, court staff, spectators, even the parent with the child's consent, and captured both factual details and the emotional resonance of the moment. The story was precise, yet filled with warmth, humor, and the contagious joy that had first filled the courtroom. Social media amplified the story almost immediately. A post highlighting the child's words, "Doggy, police," and Max's calm, attentive demeanor quickly went viral. Viewers shared the story widely, responding with comments filled with delight, nostalgia, and admiration for both the child and the dog. Thousands were captivated by the combination of a toddler's unfiltered innocence and a highly trained police dog's dignity. The courtroom, once a space of procedural solemnity, had become a symbol of universal joy, reminding people everywhere that even in the most rigid environments, simple moments of wonder and connection could exist. News outlets soon followed, creating human interest segments, highlighting the extraordinary impact of 2 simple words spoken by a 3-year-old. The story emphasized not only the child's innocence, but also Max's composed and gentle demeanor. Interviews with Officer Daniels provided insight into the dog's training, temperament, and experiences, illustrating how discipline, empathy, and careful observation allowed Max to respond perfectly to the unique situation. The narrative resonated widely. Parents, animal lovers, and even professionals in high-pressure jobs appreciated the reminder that joy and curiosity could shine even in the most serious settings. Local communities embraced the story enthusiastically. Schools, daycare centers, and parent groups shared the viral footage, discussing the importance of curiosity, empathy, and recognizing the beauty of small moments. Children were delighted often pointing at their own pets and declaring them good dogs with newfound pride. Adults, many of whom had grown accustomed to routines, deadlines, and responsibilities, paused to reflect on the simplicity of happiness and the importance of observing the world with fresh eyes. Max's calm presence had indirectly inspired countless people to reconsider the ways animals and children could influence their perspective on life. The story also resonated within law enforcement communities. Officers, both local and national, praised Max's ability to remain calm and dignified, even in a courtroom filled with distractions. Training departments highlighted the interaction as a teaching example. Beyond physical skill and obedience, empathy and emotional awareness were critical components of effective service animals. Max became a model of professionalism blended with kindness, illustrating that the simplest actions remaining composed, attentive, and gentle could have an extraordinary impact on those around them. The child, oblivious to the viral attention now surrounding them, continued to grow in curiosity and wonder. Each recounting of the story by parents or reporters reinforced the lesson. Observation, joy, and acknowledgement of living beings could transform ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences. Through the lens of innocence, even the most formal, intimidating environment, the courtroom was transformed into a playground of emotional learning, shared humanity, and heartwarming interaction. The child's 2 words had accomplished more than they could possibly comprehend, touching lives far beyond their immediate perception. Months later, the story of Doggy, Police, continued to circulate as a symbol of joy and innocence. It appeared in human interest segments on local television, featured in online blogs, and was shared widely in community newsletters. The narrative was simple, yet profound. A toddler's recognition of a police dog had created laughter, warmth, and a shared sense of humanity within a formal, structured environment. Max, ever composed, became the quiet hero of the story, embodying the perfect balance of professionalism, empathy, and gentle presence. The lasting impact of the story extended into public discussions about the human-animal bond, the importance of curiosity, and the need to cherish small moments of joy. Psychologists and educators cited the interaction as an example of early childhood curiosity fostering empathy, recognition, and communication. Communities emphasized the significance of observing the world attentively, learning from innocence, and valuing the emotional contributions of animals in human life. The story, initially a brief courtroom incident, evolved into a shared cultural memory, demonstrating how small, authentic moments could resonate far beyond their immediate setting. Even the courthouse itself became a place associated with warmth and joy. Visitors who arrived weeks later, aware of the story through media or word of mouth, asked to see Max or the courtroom where the interaction had occurred. Staff took quiet pride in recounting the tale, describing the toddler's excitement, Max's composure, and the reactions of those present. The courthouse had inadvertently become a landmark of human-animal connection and innocence, a story whispered, shared, and remembered long after the original participants had moved on with their lives. In the end, the story of the 3-year-old and Max, the police dog, transcended its initial setting. It became a universal lesson. Simplicity, curiosity, and genuine interaction could break through formality, tension, and routine. 2 words spoken by an innocent child had sparked laughter, warmth, and shared humanity in a place where rules often overshadow emotional expression. Max, trained for courage and precision, had demonstrated that empathy and presence were equally powerful tools in touching lives. The world, both inside and outside the courthouse, had felt the ripple effect of those brief, unforgettable moments. Weeks turned into months, yet the memory of that extraordinary courtroom moment lingered in the minds of those present. The words "doggy," "police," had become more than a fleeting utterance. They were a symbol of joy, curiosity, and the enduring power of innocence. What had begun as a simple encounter between a 3-year-old and Max, the police dog, had evolved into a story that transcended the walls of the courthouse, touching hearts in homes, offices, schools, and communities far beyond. The parent often reflected on the day, amazed at how quickly a small, unscripted moment could leave a permanent mark. They recounted the story to friends, family, and even casual acquaintances, describing the child's wide-eyed fascination, Max's calm and dignified presence, and the ripple effect that spread throughout the courtroom. Each retelling carried the same warmth, the same laughter, and the same awe, reinforcing the idea that small moments authentic, unguarded, and heartfelt could have extraordinary resonance. Max, meanwhile, continued his work as a police dog, fully trained and ever vigilant. Yet that day had left its subtle mark on him as well. The dog's calm demeanor, honed over years of high-pressure situations, had proven its quiet power in an entirely different setting. Officer Daniels often remarked on how Max seemed to carry an unspoken pride in that interaction. There was no official commendation, no recognition ceremony, yet the moment had affirmed the dog's role, not only as a trained professional, but as a living symbol of patience, empathy, and silent understanding. The courtroom, too, remembered the day differently. Staff and officials often shared stories about the 3-year-old and Max, recounting the laughter, smiles, and warmth that had quietly permeated the room. Clerks and bailiffs, who were usually invisible in the eyes of spectators, proudly described the subtle joy that had swept through their workplace. The judge, usually reserved and formal, sometimes allowed a soft smile to escape during unrelated proceedings, a private acknowledgement of that unforgettable day. Even routine court activities seemed lighter, infused with the lingering warmth of shared human experience. The story eventually made its way into local media, capturing the attention of journalists who saw its potential to inspire and uplift. Television segments, newspaper articles, and online features highlighted the innocence of the child and the disciplined, gentle nature of Max. Parents, educators, and animal lovers were captivated. Comments poured in from viewers sharing personal stories of children and pets, their own encounters with animals, and reflections on the importance of observing the world with curiosity and joy. The narrative quickly became more than entertainment. It was a lesson in humanity. Educators and psychologists began referencing the interaction as an example of early childhood development and the role of empathy in human-animal relationships. Workshops and parenting forums discussed the significance of encouraging curiosity, fostering emotional intelligence, and allowing children to express wonder freely. Max's calm response illustrated a vital principle. Even trained, professional animals possess the ability to provide emotional support and enhance human experiences. The child's innocence, paired with the dog's dignity, became a case study in the subtle ways empathy and awareness could influence those around us. The parent noticed the impact in everyday life as well. The child, emboldened by the recognition of the police dog, began to approach the world with heightened curiosity and openness. Every dog in the park, every small animal in the backyard, became an opportunity for exploration, learning, and delight. Teachers at preschool noted the child's enthusiastic engagement during story time and play, highlighting a keen observational ability and social awareness uncommon children so young. It was as if the courtroom moment had unlocked a seed of confidence, empathy, and engagement that would continue to grow for years to come. For Officer Daniels and Max, the story became a quiet source of pride. Daniels often recounted the event during training sessions with other handlers, emphasizing the importance of patience, composure, and empathy. Max's ability to remain calm and attentive, even in a courtroom filled with distractions, was a demonstration of training meeting heart. The bond between handler and dog, forged through years of practice and shared experiences, had produced not only professional excellence, but a profound emotional impact. In a way, the dog had taught the adults in the courtroom as much as the child had learned from the dog. As time passed, the story began to circulate in social media communities worldwide. Videos of the toddler pointing at Max and softly exclaiming, "Doggy, police," were shared millions of times. Comments poured in from viewers expressing joy, nostalgia, and admiration. Many adults were reminded of their own childhood encounters with animals, the delight of discovery, and the importance of savoring small moments of connection. The story's universal appeal lay in its simplicity. A child's curiosity, a dog's dignity, and the warmth that emerged when the two met. Local organizations invited Officer Daniels and Max to participate in community outreach programs. Schools welcomed them to read stories, police departments invited them to events, and therapy programs recognized the potential for the child-animal connection to inspire, educate, and heal. Max, ever composed, adjusted easily to the new attention, maintaining a calm demeanor that reassured both children and adults. The small act of recognition in a courtroom had grown into a broader mission of fostering empathy, curiosity, and community connection. Even in casual conversation, the story continued to resonate. Friends and neighbors often mentioned it with a smile, recalling the simple magic of the day. Parents shared it with their own children, emphasizing the importance of noticing, learning, and appreciating the world around them. The child, now slightly older, would occasionally revisit the memory, pointing out dogs in the neighborhood with a confident, excited voice. The connection between curiosity and recognition, between innocence and the wisdom embodied by animals, had become a lasting lesson in life, one that would shape experiences for years to come. The courtroom, now forever linked to this moment, retained a subtle aura of warmth. Visitors and staff would occasionally reference the story, sharing memories of the day when the rigidity of authority had softened, if only for a brief period, under the influence of two simple words and a dignified dog. The story became a reminder that human spaces, no matter how formal or serious, are never immune to the transformative power of curiosity, empathy, and shared joy. It was a lesson in observing life, cherishing innocence, and recognizing that the smallest gestures can leave the deepest impressions. In the final analysis, the tale of a 3-year-old spotting a police dog and uttering 2 words became far more than a courtroom anecdote. It evolved into a narrative about humanity, empathy, and the beauty of simple connections. It illustrated how even the briefest interaction, a child's recognition, a dog's calm presence, and a parent's gentle guidance could ripple outward, influencing communities, inspiring media, and teaching enduring lessons. 2 words, spoken with innocence, had sparked laughter, warmth, reflection, and admiration on a scale no one could have anticipated. Years later, those who had been present in the courtroom remembered the day vividly. The parent often recounted the story to friends, family, and even strangers, emphasizing the way small moments of connection can transform lives. Officers and courthouse staff fondly recalled the laughter, smiles, and the shared joy that lingered long after proceedings resumed. And Max, though now older and seasoned in service, remained a quiet hero of the story, an embodiment of discipline, empathy, and silent dignity that had made a lasting impact on a world often dominated by seriousness. Ultimately, the story endured not because of drama, conflict, or extraordinary feats, but because of its authenticity. A child's curiosity, a dog's attentiveness, and a parent's gentle encouragement created a timeless moment. It was a reminder that life's smallest acts, words spoken with honesty, recognition given with sincerity, presence maintained with care, can echo far beyond their initial setting. Doggy, police, became a mantra of joy, a symbol of the enduring power of innocence, and a story cherished by all who were fortunate enough to witness it.